I've figured it out. The Darkest Day. I'm pretty positive that I've figured it out. Now, you may be thinking, well, doesn't the game already tell you what the Darkest Day is? And my answer would be yes, and no. But also yes. The game actually holds some pretty big secrets just under the surface, waiting to be discovered, and I believe I figured them out. Now, most of you won't know me from YouTube, so I recommend subscribing to me here for more cool lore videos in the future. But if you have seen me before, it's most likely from Twitter, where I post discoveries like the one I'm about to share with you pretty regularly, so you can follow me there too. Now, I just warn you, this video is not only about the ending and the final Pokemon at the end of the game, but despite the fact that I figured all this out without looking at any leaked or data mined material, we will still be discussing those data mined Pokemon that I have found to further back up my discoveries I made anyways. So there will be spoilers. Alright, still here? Good! So, what is the Darkest Day? Let's first look at the info straight up given to us in the game, while standing in front of what you and Sonia may both agree upon to be a geoglyph of a Dynamax Pokemon. More on that in a bit. Sonia then says as follows. A long time ago, a great black storm covered the Galar region. Giant Pokemon ran rampant. But what was the black storm they called the Darkest Day? What connection does it have to Dynamax? As an important side note, if you select the Darkest Day as your dialogue option, she says the portion depicting the Black Storm has mostly disappeared. Fast forwarding to much later in the game, once you confront Rose about the Darkest Day at his tower, he says this. Pardon? What are you talking about? We already brought about the Darkest Day. Or should I say, the ultimate Pokemon, Eternatus. He goes on to explain that, in order to supply the Galar region with limitless energy, he needed to wake up Eternatus by pumping it full of energy-enriched wishing stars, the Dynamax red glowing space rocks that appear before you at the start of your journey. And wake up it did. Moving on a bit, we begin facing Eternatus itself, and eventually it turns into its Eternamax form, bringing a dark storm with it. A dark storm that is emphasized in its dark storminess by the contrast of the light that appears once Zacian and Zamazenta defeat it. After catching it, we can now further cement the connection between Dynamaxing, the Darkest Day, and Eternatus, if that wasn't obvious already, by reading its dex entries. It was inside a meteorite that fell 20,000 years ago. There seems to be a connection between this Pokemon and the Dynamax phenomenon. Pretty much, saying that there is a connection between Dynamaxing and Eternatus. The dex continues on. The core on its chest absorbs energy emanating from the lands of the Galar region. This energy is what allows Eternatus to stay active. So, the dex is pointing out that it absorbs energy to stay active, which I'm sure is how Rose was able to pump it full of Wishing Star energy. And now, reading about its Eternamax form. As a result of Rose's meddling, Eternatus absorbed all of the energy in the Galar region. It's now in a state of power overload. Again, mentioning absorbing. Reading on. Infinite amounts of energy pour from this Pokemon's enlarged core, warping the surrounding space-time. Like the swirly dark storm surrounding him once you face him. Now, at this point, most people would be satisfied with this. Eternamax form Eternatus is the Darkest Day. In fact, if you go back to the geoglyph, you can see the snake-like Eternamax Eternatus depicted in the top left, which Sonia is likely referring to as the Darkest Day portion. Not only that, but if you look at the tapestry that depicts the Darkest Day, you get the same swirly clouds that Eternamax Eternatus creates during his battle. But that's the thing. There still seems to be a big, massive Dynamax-sized puzzle piece missing, and I am not satisfied. Who is the Dynamax Pokemon depicted in the geoglyph, and what does it have to do with the Darkest Day? Well, first of all, I want to disagree with Rose about something. Something he didn't seem so sure about himself. I think Eternatus is a giant part of the Darkest Day, don't get me wrong, but I think the Darkest Day is not the Pokemon specifically. I think the Darkest Day is referring to an event. The name itself sounds like an event, like Independence Day, or my birthday. And Zacian and Zamazenta are included in the Darkest Day story, but their names aren't the Darkest Day. If we need another supporting example of why this would be an event, and not Eternatus specifically, we can refer back to the conversation with Sonia in the vault, where she says, and what even caused the Darkest Day? So, you can interpret what Sonia is saying as A, the Darkest Day is an event caused by Eternatus, or B, Eternatus is still in fact the Darkest Day, but something causes Eternatus. Either way, there's something more to the story we're missing by the end of the game. So let's turn our attention back to the geoglyph. The thing I've actually been wanting to answer? Who is that Pokemon? My immediate guess, Toxtricity. It seems so obvious to me while playing the game. It's not a perfect match, but they both have the same almond-shaped eyes. They both have electricity, although it's debatable if the electricity is coming from Eternatus instead, and they both have spikes everywhere. It also seems like a notable Pokemon in Sword and Shield because you just get handed a Toxel partway through the game, and there are historical statues of Toxtricities in Holbury. That's gotta at least add some points to the importance of Toxtricity in the game. If Toxtricity was the Pokemon tied to the Darkest Day, however, we had to find a connection even Sonia couldn't uncover. We needed to think outside the box for more answers. Okay, like I said, the Pokemon on the hill looks like Toxtricity, but also I have to admit, it doesn't, and I knew that. How could a Dynamax Pokemon look similar but different at the same time? Huh. That's right. Gigantamaxing! A special form for what's clearly a special occasion. You know, a tragic event told for centuries to come. If I was right about this, then there was one place I could find answers fast. It was time for me to finally look at data mined material to see if Gigantamax Toxtricity existed, and if it looked like the Pokemon on the hill. Sure enough, it exists! And it looks just like the gigantic geoglyph Pokemon. Now, I'm not gonna show it here, at least to keep intact some of the surprise, but I do want to read you its dex entries. Its excessive electric energy is its weapon. This Pokemon can build up more electricity than any thundercloud, and out of control after its poison penetrated its brain. It tears across the land in a rampage, contaminating the earth with its toxic sweat. More electricity than a thundercloud? Kinda like what's depicted in the Darkest Day, huh? Oh, you know, if that wasn't Eternatus doing it. Tearing across the land in a rampage? Didn't Sonia mention the same thing happening during the Darkest Day? I believe, at this point, I can quite comfortably say that the Pokemon depicted in the Darkest Day geoglyph is indeed Gigantamax Toxtricity. But wait a minute, why Toxtricity? Out of every Pokemon, why Toxtricity? I needed to know. I was still unsatisfied. We now know which notable Pokemon were involved in the Darkest Day. Eternatus, Zacian, Zamazenta, and now Gigantamax Toxtricity. But how did the events lay out? How did Toxtricity get involved? It ain't even a legendary Pokemon. Now, for our final detour. I want to bring up my love of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I love that game because of all the cool exploring and secrets to be uncovered. You know, some secrets I've even uncovered myself that I'll make a video about in the future. But I also love it because it has great environmental storytelling. The kind you just gotta look around and figure stuff out for yourself. And honestly, I think the devs at Game Freak love it too. I bet that was a big reason why they decided to include the wild area. But honestly, there isn't too much environmental storytelling or even secrets to be found out there. I still had hope though. I think there's more going on in the Galar region than people give it credit for. Obviously not to the extent of Breath of the Wild, but I bet it's there. So I had an idea. What if I looked up the location data for Toxel? Could I find something there? Bringing it up shows a few locations in the wild area, which obviously count, but I was much more interested in the one route it showed up in. The only route. Route 7. I flew there right away, and what I found was pretty much what I expected. It's a route where you can find Toxel. I walked up and down a few times before I realized, wait, this technically wasn't the entire route. There was a bridge to the east side that was still a part of Route 7, and so I walked over to it and began crossing it. And oh my god, that thing, that weird cliffside that I even remember looking a bit off during my own playthrough. It's a crater! Suddenly my mind was all over the place. The events of the Darkest Day were all lining up in my brain. I'm pretty sure I just figured it all out. 20,000 years ago, according to the dex entry we read earlier, Eternatus crashed into the earth inside of a meteorite, likely in this very spot. Fast forward to only a few thousand years ago, a wishing star containing Dynamax energy fell in front of the two youths, possibly landing close enough to be absorbed and awaken the sleeping Eternatus in the crater. Once Eternatus awakens, now powered up to the point where he enters Eternamax form, he causes Pokemon around him to Dynamax. You know, just like what happens partway through the game, which, by the way, the game itself hints that Route 7 is a power spot. I mean, think about it. Pokemon Dynamax across the tunnel where Route 7 is in the game. It happens. It's a thing. It's important. It's hinting at it. So many reasons. Now that Eternatus is making Pokemon Dynamax, what Pokemon can be found nearby? Toxel, and presumably its evolutions. This is what causes one of the first known Dynamaxes, Gigantamax Toxtricity, to rampage across the land. Toxtricity wasn't the only Pokemon Dynamaxed, but it being one of the first, due to its close proximity to Eternatus' landing crater, and its out-of-control nature likely left a not-so-happy impression on the terrified Galar people. Next, as we all know, is where Zacian and Zamazenta come in, and the rest is Galar history. There. I think I've figured it all out. I'm pretty sure we now know as much as we can about the Darkest Day before the story is inevitably fleshed out even more in a future third Ultra Sword and Shield version. But until then, I feel pretty satisfied. That being said, I'm open to being wrong. It's fun to dive even deeper, so if anyone digs up any more secrets that can flesh out the Darkest Day, please let me know in the comments. And as a side note, I just want to mention that all of this takes place in the Tapestries and Hammerlock, which is like 10 feet away from Route 7, where the crater is, where the Toxel are. They're clearly like in Hammerlock watching it happen. So I mean, if you needed more proof, there's more proof. It's gotta be. There's no way. It's gotta be. Everything lines up too perfectly. But anyways, if you dug this video, leave a like, and I have plenty more things I've discovered to share with you in the future, so feel free to subscribe. Follow me on Twitch too if you want, so you can join me in the secret finding, the shiny hunting, that kind of stuff. But, you know, until then, thanks for watching.